with that fantastic quote by Jimmy Page, which I love that connection that you made with that song, and the Steve Cropper idea is interesting. We're going to have to dig into that. But on the open G stuff, I was reading recently a fantastic quote that Keith mentioned where, when you're in open G, it gives the rhythm section all that space on the bottom. Because when you remove that sixth string on your guitar, you remove the bass element in your guitar. So that opens it up for Wyman on bass and Charlie. And I never thought of it from that perspective. And that is another part of this secret sauce thing.
Yeah, and it's a great point. Getting the low E string, just pulling it off. I mean, that's his idea. That was not Ry Cooder's idea. He's right. It got in the way for what he wanted to do. The attack that he wanted to have on an open G, it does get in the way. It really does. And the interplay, I really do miss Bill Wyman. I love Daryl Jones is a great bass player, but Wyman is another one, like Charlie, who gets overlooked, is underrated.
Yeah.
The way that the melodies that he created, little counter melodies, they're just so, not just on, like Start Me Up is a great, the melody he plays on Start Me Up. But even if you listen to Mixed Emotions, there's not much happening in the verses of those songs. It's just that riff. But listen to Bill Wyman on that track. He's playing his own sort of melody within the song, and it sits in there so perfectly. That is an ingredient that I miss a great deal.
Speaking of which, I'm so glad you mentioned Mixed Emotions. Have you heard any of the Dolby Atmos stuff with the Stones?
I've seen that guy posting. I have not gone in there myself, but I can think of somebody posting on YouTube, and he, I did listen to that Mixed Emotions snippet. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
there's a lot happening.
Oh,
album, that was the first album that I was able to buy as a fan, because I was in junior high, 13 years old in 1989. I just started playing guitar around age 12. So, Steel Wheels is not considered one of their classic albums, but for me, it's the first one I bought as a fan that was brand new at the time. And I still go back and listen to it. I know people don't like it. It's too slick. The songwriting, this must have been a concerted effort on their part, because almost every song on that album has like a professional sounding bridge or middle eight, with the exception of Break the Spell and Hold On to Your Hat.
Terrifying, maybe? Does Terrifying have that?
Terrifying barely has a chorus. Everything else.
A Mere Mortal.
Yes. And that's like almost all, probably 100% a mix song.
You think so? Well, I
do. I think that one is mostly mixed.
Well, you're probably right, because I have a theory that any song he plays guitar on, for the most part, at least in the modern era, is a song he definitely wrote.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And especially if he's playing like High Wire.
Have they played High Wire live?
They didn't play High Wire live, but he plays the riff on the record.
God, that fooled me.
It sounds like Keith. And
that's the only time that I get I confuse. I actually realize that it's, I'm surprised that it's not Keith's, because there are other moments where you go, oh yeah, that's obviously Mick. You can tell.
The one way you can tell is because he plays all up and down the neck. Mick does when he's writing.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, if you're not a great singer, like Keith maybe is not the great singer that Mick is, the melodies he creates there's too many notes. And what a Mick's job is to boil those ideas down.
Right.
You'll notice, like, if you listen to the outtake of Keith singing like Moon Is Up from Voodoo Lounge, and he's like, there's so many notes that he doesn't stop singing. And then the way Mick cleans it up and he tightens up the phrases, that you realize how important that aspect of the songwriting partnership is. But conversely, because Mick's not a great guitar player, he's playing all these chords up and down the neck, like come in. Whereas something like All Down the Line, Keith can be in one position. Like this is a standard tuning, but it's all, he's not moving anywhere in this direction. It's all one position because he knows what he's doing and he can tighten up a guitar phrase the same way that Mick can tighten up a vocal melody break.
Fantastic. That's so well put. That's amazing, the symbiotic effect going on there, but in different categories, different ways.
It's the greatest. Just listen to all this Love is Strong's one of them. All the Booty Lounge songs that Keith had a hand in singing before with a guide vocal or a scratch vocal, and you see what Mick does to the melody. He even takes some of the words, literally some of the words he'll keep in his own lyrics. Like Love is Strong, Keith is singing about being in the park or in the dark, and Mick will retain a lot, as much as he can, of those like lyric fragments that Keith is coming up with, but he's always tightening up the melodies so that they're sharp and
you were getting into this, and I'd like to go into this further here, but on a grand scale, what are some ways that you would describe Keith Richards as a guitar player? Because you were doing some of that stuff right now where, for me, there's a physicality in his playing, which is, one could say idiosyncratic, in a way, but on visually, it could be like, you don't need to do that. But if you actually break it down, it's part of the riff because of the timing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you need to kick your leg and do all these moves? Maybe not, but you're right. You kind of do. The way the attack is percussive and rhythmic, and it would be hard to just do that sitting down, being with your back straight and proper posture. You do need to like lean into it like he does. But I think guitar for him it's a tool in the service of a song. That's what it is. It's all about the songs. And even that they're like his riffs. Something he said really caught my attention after Chuck Berry died. And he was talking to somebody about Chuck Berry's the riffs that begin Chuck Berry songs. And some say, well, you could say that they all sound alike. And Keith's like, if you think that, then you don't know much. You don't know what you're doing. It's like maybe the very beginning is like, and that kind of stuff. Those were very similar, but Keith called them calling cards. Just those little introductions are calling cards, and then everything that comes after that is the song. And they work different. Nadine is way different than Memphis, Tennessee. It's way different from Johnny B. Good. And so the very beginnings, yes, are very similar. But the songs come after them. And I think there was something in those, I call it disembodied guitar intros that Chuck Berry had. Like Nadine was a...
I love that song.
Something wrong, King. When I don't see any bus, no.
Coffee-colored Cadillac.
Yes. Oh, the coffee-colored Cadillac. Oh my God, amazing!
What a poet.
Yes, he really was. But there's something I think that got Keith, maybe subliminally or subconsciously, he wanted to create those calling cards for himself, and for them, it became these. It's the first notes of the first Rolling Stone, Not Fade Away, which they did not write, but you can say he kind of did with this. That's a sus root. That's a 1/4 sus root. Just like Start Me Up. It's the same thing, and it was in there from the very beginning. And so, the idea that Ry Cooder put that in him is just flatly absurd. And like that. So I think there's something about that Keith, the Chuck Berry I call it, again, disembodied guitar intros, but then it's got to go into a song. And at the very beginning, those early days, he was coming up with all the melodies that Mick sang for, I think, for 19 Nervous Breakdown, Get Off My Cloud. And then eventually Mick started writing on his own and became a great songwriter in his own right. Like, Sticky Fingers is primarily a Mick album. Like, I was Brown Sugar, Sweat,
right, Moonlight
Mile, Dead Flowers, probably, it's not all, probably mostly Mick. Sister Morphine, Mick.
Yeah, wow, yeah, totally.
I Got the Blues, probably mostly Mick. Then Bitch has some Keith in there for sure.
But Can't You Hear Me Knocking? I mean,
for sure is Keith. And Wild Horses was primarily Keith.
Yeah.
So take nothing away from Mick Jagger. He came into his own, and is able to craft a tune on his own.
By the way, speaking of Mick, I'm glad you're on that subject, because one of the little short, silly reels that I've put up on my channel is this funny moment, which I know you've seen, of when them playing When the Whip Comes Down in 2003. When you know where I'm going with this. Keith yells at Mick to turn it down.
Yeah.
And so I love that moment. I thought it was a fantastically real moment, even for these guys.
Plastic. They're not plastic. They get mad at each other, and it's the most endearing thing about it. Mick sticks his tongue out. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to me?
Right.
You're not gonna do anything to me. You're gonna eat it.
Exactly.
I wonder why, whenever Mick plays on stage, he's never loud. And like, if you're gonna let this guy be the rhythm guitar player for the song, turn him up.
Oh, yeah. So I see. Well, yeah, definitely on like maybe like something like a Don't Stop or Mixed Emotions or something. Yeah. But like on When the Whip Comes Down, you're like, When the Whip Comes Down, that's more like for him, I think, and respectable stuff like that. Yeah,
he wrote those songs. I mean, those are his babies. But even like they tried Torn and Frayed, which is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
2002 in a couple of the theater shows, maybe two.
I was there for the second ever performance in Chicago.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a hell of a moment.
I didn't see a theater show. That's one of my life's great regrets. I did not get to see a theater show.
I hope it happens for you.
But Torn and Frayed, they tried a couple times and it didn't work because Mick was playing the rhythm on the acoustic guitar and you couldn't hear it. Yeah. So you had Keith doing these fills to a rhythm that is not present. And then Ronnie goes over and switches to pedal steel, like for the end of the song. And it's like, whoa, what's happening here? So, but I love that they tried.
Yeah, and as Mick is a guitar player, on that reel that I excerpted When the Whip Comes Down, all these comments came in of people, for the most part, enjoying it like everyone should. It's just a fun little moment. But then there were all these assholes saying, "Oh, what is Mick doing with the guitar? He doesn't know how to play." And we're just got off this little bit here where if you do the math, Sticky Fingers is mostly a Mick venture. Those songs don't just appear. You've got to write them with something. And as a guitar player, he is a musician, absolute, just like Keith or anyone else. So I reject this whole idea that, what is Mick Jagger doing with the guitar? Screw you. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. It's like, it doesn't mean he needs to play bass on record.
Right.
Bigger Bang might have too much Mick Jagger on bass.
What's that? Dangerous Beauty. That's him on Dangerous Beauty, isn't it, on that one?
Yeah.
It's a little floppy.
I like that song. I like the orc idea. It's political but funny. The idea of turning abuse, into like a femme fatale kind of narrative it's a funny idea. I was here for it, but I don't need to be here and play bass. So, I'll be anxious to see who's playing bass on the new album. I imagine it's going to be a cast of different people, including Paul McCartney.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's a fantastic way to. Well, you don't. There's such an urge to say wrap things up, but they're the first to want to reject any notion of wanting to put any final definitive ideas. anywhere.
Right.
But, for this album, it was a nice touch, I'll say.
And Paul has said as much. It's like, I can't believe I've known these guys for 60 years, close to it. And here I am in the same room with them. We're all still alive, or most of us anyway. It's pretty special.
How are you doing on time? I have one topic I'd love to squeeze in before we wind it down.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you. I think I'd love to shine some light on episode 5 of your channel, because you've spent a good amount of time talking about Malagueña.
Oh yeah, Malagueña. Yeah, the first song he ever learned.
And I think this needs to be really underlined, because we have to think about this. Put the math together here. Here is Keith Richards. We know him as what? The rock icon, the blues purist, traditionalist, the rootsy guy. His first ever piece he ever learned on the damn instrument was a beautiful Spanish piece that his grandfather taught him. I mean, that cannot be overestimated.
It's not only, it stuck with him through his entire life. Something that it's the first thing he ever learned, and it's been with him right up to the present day. I think if you had a time to sit with Keith Richards at home, whether it's in Connecticut or Turks and Caicos, the way he plays when he's at home, I would say this with an acoustic guitar with no pick and playing with his thumb, searching little melodies, just with no pick. And it all stems from that piece that he learned as a child. And you can hear it the way he plays on Struggle, the little fills he does on acoustic guitar on the solo song Struggle. You can hear it the way he played Ruby Tuesday in 1989 and 90, when he had that beautiful nylon string guitar. The little fills he played in those versions were very sort of Spanishy, for lack of a better word. Losing My Touch, that the song he likes.
Well, do you know the F/C chord he does on that intro that he finger picks? That's one chord that I can't stop playing in any of my stuff.
Yeah, and it's not rocket science, but it's not what he's known for. He's not playing jazz fusion like Scott Henderson, or it's like the stuff is simple, but it's musical,
right?
And it's deceptively simple, meaning that it's not as simple as it seems if you actually had to sit down and play. But the problem, or it's not the problem, the challenge is in the writing of it. Like, to go back to the Ry Cooder thing, however much he influenced Keith, Ry Cooder didn't go on and write all the songs that Keith Richards did in Open G or in any standard, whatever. That's how you know. That's how you can evaluate somebody's influence. What did they do apart from one another?
And besides the licks that came from that whole Malagueña, piece that he learned, I mean, I think there's something also very deep-rooted in terms of just the physicality of playing that really shaped him, about dynamics or about delicacy, and for the acoustic guitar to be his main instrument. Because you're right, I've heard him say that at home there is no electric guitar to be seen. All acoustic guitars at home.
It really has indelibly shaped him. And there's a great, I think it's bonus footage of the Scorsese movie Shine a Light, where he's just people are on stage like milling about, and he's just sitting there playing with his smile on his face, like he's that kid still. And yeah, I don't know. The first things you learn, it's kind of like anything else in your life. When you're that young and that impressionable, it sticks with you, whether it's good or bad. It could be some kind of trauma that you're never able to shake, but it's in his musical DNA, like forever.
Yeah, and that's what's fascinating to me, is that like I say, it's so easy to forget that in the lore of a Keith Richards, but a Spanish piece was what started and lit the fuse on everything. So let that simmer in everyone's mind, because that is pretty huge.
Keith contains multitudes. Like Walt Whitman said, he contains multitudes. But you have to go back to where we started with like the Charlie Watts discussion. You have to listen to this stuff. If all you know is hot rocks and you think they haven't made a good album since Tattoo You, then you're not gonna be hip to any of this. And you're missing out.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about, when you're listening to music and stuff. There's many ways where you're getting pleased, and there's many itches to be scratched when you're listening to music, and you have to embrace the fact that with the Stones, there's just sometimes they may not be great songs, but it's great fucking music. There's a difference.
It's always it's with those guys. I mean, there are outtakes that came out of Voodoo Lounge, the Voodoo Stew, Brew, and Residue.
It was supposed to be like a double album should have been.
Yeah, it's like it. And there's an outtake called Randy Whore. It's like it was the working title of it.
Okay, I remember
Basically
hearing it. I don't care.
Keith and Charlie. It's not even a song yet. It's just the two of them playing. And then Mick comes in a little bit, but I could listen to that all day. I'm barely exaggerating. There's just something about the way they played together, whether or not it was a good song or whether or not it was a hit, but there's something about the way they sounded together that I could just listen to all day.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's just a body thing. They know that, I've always, my little mantra, which I haven't really smooth out yet, but just off the top of my head, it just feels like if you're to compare to someone like the Beatles were a combination of the mind, the brain, and the heart, and the Stones are the heart and the hips.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Beatles are great craftsmen. There's no denying it. They had a skill. Probably when you're talking about dotting I's and crossing T's.
Yeah,
they had like a head start on the Stones. I mean,
right.
Paul and John knew each other when they were 15 years old, and tried to write songs before, years before they got famous. So, and then they were a couple years older than Mick and Keith.
Right.
So if you go back to you think about youth sports, the 16U team is going to be better than the 13U team. I mean, that's that stuff matters.
Right.
And I do think that they caught up, maybe they're not in the same. Somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but the Beatles, Paul and John would have been great songwriters in any era.
Right, absolutely.
The guy who wrote Rich Cohen, The Sun and the Moon and the Rolling Stones.
Okay, I haven't read that.
It might have been him. I'm not sure, but that's true. They could have, if they were writing for Tin Pan Alley, Cole Porter, or Gershwin, they could have done that. Where Mick and Keith could not. I mean, I will acknowledge that. I will hop to that. I don't think they could have done that. But maybe they could have if they needed to, if they try. But they just got into a darker, funkier, blacker side of music, and because that's what appealed to them. And if you wanted to put a major 6 or major 7 chord, or you could have done that. It was done before the Beatles. I mean, even they thought they were the first ones to end a song on a 6th. I can't remember which song it was. I forget. But George Martin said no. The Glenn Miller Orchestra ended a song. He knew that guy. So it's all been done. It's just a matter of what appeals to you, and it ain't right.
Right. Exactly. It's all been done under the sun, as Chuck even said. And I'm a big Beatles fan. I love the Beatles, huge fan as well. So you're not going to get any hate from me. I know for you as well, because talk about apples and oranges. The people who want to stay in that kind of high school idea of which band is better,
Well,
Okay, come on.
it's
Let's
insufferable.
grow up.
The Beatles and McCartney, really the only two. I mean, McCartney, to add the Beatles career and his solo career, is the only one who should be mentioned in the same breath as the Stones, in my opinion. It's the two of them, the two of those institutions. When you look at the depth, I mean, as great as Led Zeppelin was, it was 6 or 7 albums. Pink Floyd, how many? I mean, I think they might have 12 or 14. This psychedelic stuff, but the meat of their career was just a handful of albums. The Wall, Dark Side of the Moon, Metal, Tear Me. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but the Beatles plus McCartney and the Stones are the only two institutions with the depth of catalog and longevity. They really are set apart. It's crazy. The number of songs.
Oh yeah, totally. I had a little bit here, but we'll have to continue that for part 2 of this conversation. But both bands offer such rewarding journeys. If you were to take a deep dive on any of those bands, there's a learning curve for each band, which is what may be a hindrance for Beatles fans to get into Stones fans and Stones fans to get into Beatles fans and vice versa. Just like there's a learning curve for any band, right? Really. Yeah. But once you sign off on the learning curve, you're in for a treat because both bands offer such a ride. It's fun.
Right? Yeah. It's. I mean, it gets a little crazy. There's a book about the Beatles. It's an academic. It listens to every note and counts the mistakes.
Really? What book is that?
Oh my gosh!
Oh, it was like an Oxford Press book or something?
Yeah, it's an academic study, and
that's been in my Amazon cart for the longest time. I didn't want to buy it because I don't know if I'm going to like this book. Might be too dry and like a textbook.
Yeah, it's missing the point. It really is missing the point.
Oh, were they in support of the music or kind of bashing it?
No, in support. It's like like slavishly in support of it. That it merits this kind of close study. It's about the song. Like, they're probably the only band somebody would even the notion of doing that to. They're the only ones. But I don't think you'll find a bigger Beatles fan really than Keith.
Yeah.
If you were like to speak to him privately, Mick said at some point that Keith used to play the Beatles so much in the early days that it would drive him nuts.
Okay.
Yeah. Like he maybe did it just to sort of needle him. But I think Keith is a huge fan.
Yeah, I was just watching the My Life as a Rolling Stone, that 4-part BBC thing that they put out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think in that one he most recently, emphasized that, he was almost studying those Beatles records to learn and get used to that structure, the template, because they perfected it so well.
Yeah. He looked under the hood.
Right.
How do you write a song? And once he figured it out, he was good to go. Right. It's like, and then Mick was later, more like was Yesterday's Papers, Between the Buttons was the first song Mick wrote by himself.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
67.
Right.
So they started writing in 63, somewhere in that neighborhood.
They did.
So, it took a while. It's a craft like any other. You have to have an apprenticeship, and then you get better with age. You peak and you decline. I mean, that's
right.
Luckily, music is not like LeBron James, where you're done by, he's not finished, but 38, 39 years old. Thank God that they're 80 and we still care about what they're going to do next.
Yeah, seriously. And, and I've gotten some comments on the channel who cares? They haven't done anything since 81. And I've always been curious about people like that. Like, aren't you at the least bit curious to know that, hey, what are these guys up to? The guys that gave us, fill in the blank, all your favorite Stones songs, like from 20, 30 years ago or 5, 10 years ago. Like, aren't you curious what they're thinking about and about to do? Like, just that alone is
not only that, it's never been easier or cheaper to find out. Like, if you told me that again, it would never be easier or cheaper to find out. Now I can see if it was 1994 and you had to go to Stand Goody at the mall and spend $18 on a CD. I could see you not wanting to buy undercover, invest.
Right.
Okay, I get that. But now, if you subscribe to Apple Music or Spotify, if you had told me in 1994 that Spotify and Apple Music would exist, I would have been like, no way. No way that's ever going to happen. Forget it. Now it's go listen to Dirty Word Undercover. It'll take you 45 minutes, and then you can decide if it sucks. But at least listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and my mantra on the channel, because I've been putting up these overlooked albums videos, and my mantra has been, regardless of how the album lands as a whole, there's always moments of brilliance in every single one of the Stones albums.
Absolutely. I mean, what's their worst album? I know. What would you say their worst album?
God, well, I tell you what, anything now I was going to say Beggar's Banquet, but now anything Between the Buttons, I'm very hazy on. I only recently got into Between the Buttons, so I would only put worst because I can't really sign up for all the early covers and all that stuff to way through, or even before Aftermath, I guess.
Well,
technically.
I understand. It's not essential.
But my point is, that's a tough question to answer because the question really implies which album can I delete in a way. There's
if it's not highly rated, it's underrated. That's what I say.
There you go. You just gave me a motto for my series. I'm going to do a whole deep dive on Dirty Work soon because it's time to let go of that bullshit about that album. Like maybe at the time people were like, oh, whatever, but look back on it, it's not as bad as everyone made it seem. So the easy answer is say Dirty Work.
It was such a mess, I think, for them personally. And then, there's a great clip. Steve Lillywhite was just interviewed recently, in the last month or so.
Did you talk about this too? I think, but okay.
I think I posted about it, and he was talking about how, as a producer, when he went into that project, he's like, I can't understand how they missed Start Me Up for a few years. Like any producer worth his salt would have recognized the value of that riff right away, and it wouldn't have been allowed to meander into 70 takes of reggae. So, but then he's like, after a month working with them, then I understood how you'd get lost.
That's hilarious.
The working environment was a challenge. All night, endless jamming, drugs, fighting.
You mentioned this before, and I wanted to highlight that all this stuff we're talking about. If you want to work with Keith, bring an army cot because you're going to need it. But see, what in essence what's happening is that he's doing what we would all, as musicians or songwriters, would be doing anyway, which is sitting with the song. But we usually do it by ourselves,
right?
And work on it and massage it and get it up on its feet and all this stuff. But he wants to do it with someone else. So the only way it could work is that if he could have someone, cloned, to say, okay, I'll sit with you and hit this beat and just support you, But say what you will, that is a way to do this,
And that's the thing that excites him the most as a person and a musician, is to be with somebody else. And I get it. And I'm sure that the ideas came a lot quicker in the very early days. As drugs became more of a distraction in his life, I could see how that got tedious.
Sure, you're right.
So, and then being up all night, like when you get to a certain age, I'm still in my 40s, but the idea of staying up all night is not appealing to me at all anymore. So, it's as simple as that. But I think the workaround they found is that Keith works with Steve Jordan in New York City. And then what Mick was presented with was a little more
mature,
well developed. And then that was the workaround. I'm reading between the lines, and I'm hopeful that whatever album they come up with, I hope is more 50-50 Mick Keith composition.
I have a feeling it's going to be reminiscent of a Bridges to Babylon. vibe and creation kind of thing, where it's like two camps working their best at it.
I mean, that would be okay with me, but like the ideal for me is the first 3 songs on Voodoo Lounge. Love is Strong, You Got Me Rockin', Sparks Will Fly. Songs that Keith started and Mick finished.
Right.
That,
I love
to
that
me,
album.
Is the ideal, and then we'll see.
I love that
I'm
album.
excited.
It's not exactly say what you will, but a lot of great, amazing performances on that album. You say what you will about the songs, other people will have problems with it, but as a performance, a lot of great moments for the band in that album.
It's just a little bit too long. I think 2 or 3 songs off of it, it stands up as some of their best work of the last 40 years for sure. And I think a lot of it's because they worked or released music so infrequently, they felt like they had to put out 15 songs, or Bigger Bang was 16 songs. And no, you don't. It's okay to put out 12. I mean,
you're counting the deluxe edition, right? Those 2 extra ones. Is that what you did?
No, that would make it 18.
Holy crap! I forgot.
Yeah. Bigger Bang you're talking about. 16 tracks.
Yeah. And
it's too long.
They should have taken out at least some of those 2 to put in those other ones that they put on the deluxe, which I think were stronger than some of the ones.
Yeah. This is why they need to hire us.
Okay, as we're coming in for a landing, Scott, your top 3 favorite Keith riffs. Go.
Top 3. Well, let me give my favorite standard tuning riff is Monkey Man, and favorite open G riff is Can't You Hear Me Knocking.
Yeah.
So, gosh, you're gonna put me,
dude. My first 3 songs on my list was Monkey Man and Can't You Hear Me Knocking.
Yeah, there's great minds think like there's something about those 2 that are so uniquely him that, and they both have great grooves underneath them. That goes back to Charlie too.
Well, Monkey Man is a bit of an outlier, because let's reemphasize that is a standard tuning riff. People like to write off, open G, he's an open G and everything. Okay, you give us a break,
It's maybe a third of the time, if that. I mean, they very care that they, like Bridges to Babylon might have Lowdown is one, Too Tight is the other. I think that's the only 2. I think.
Too Tight is a badass riff.
I love it. Yeah. So Voodoo Lounge is the first 3.
Yeah.
But after that, and then I Go Wild, which is a Mick open G riff, that's it. Steel Wheels has Sad, 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 Mixed Emotions. And I think that might be it for open G. Hearts for Sale, I think Mick plays in open G.
Does Mick play Rockin' a Hard Place in open G, or is that standard?
Well, that's standard.
Really?
Standard. Yeah.
I guess I guess so. Well, it's a minor-ish chord, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's just playing there, but when he goes up here on the 12th fret, this becomes a minor seven.
Yeah.
But that's Mick. So I think Hearts for Sale is an open G riff, but other than that, there's like 2. So they're careful not to overload any album with open G riffs.
Right.
I think Some Girls has.
Oh man!
They make me run.
Right.
That's it. I think. I'm off the top of my head here. It's Only Rock and Roll. That album has If You Can't Rock Me.
Mm-hmm. Dance Little Sister.
And Luxury. I think that's it. So,
Dance Little Sister.
I think that's been standard too.
Keith's part?
Yeah, I think so. I could be wrong.
Huh.
I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought of it. I just assumed because it had that punch to it. But
yeah,
I'd love to take a listen on that one.
I don't know if he's doing I don't hear this note. I hear this. The power chord would just,
Well,
no suspension.
To me, the intro is embedded into my mind, and so that's just in the first position, that A chord.
Yeah, I think he should. I think he said that low E in standard.
I don't remember this little lick you're doing though. I don't know when that's, because I'm thinking when the song kicks off, it's just him slashing that A chord, bump, 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 bump,
You
bump.
could be right. I'm not going to bet the farm on this. This is why I don't do any guitar instruction that's non-Rolling Stones on my channel, because there's so many of them talking about gear and like, that's not me. That's I'm really about. Well, actually, I do some Waddy Wattel solos.
Yeah,
he's underrated too. Some of the stuff with Warren Zevon is incredible. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's absolutely solid, and yeah, this will have to spill over to a part 2, Scott, because I mean, because you do amazing playlists of different series. You do the Riff Cousins, you do Ronnie Wood solos, you do Waddy Wachtel solos, I believe, and you really break it down, and it's just fun to kind of pick it apart, because you're doing something that I just flat out refuse to do for one reason, because like when you do this, the only way to do this properly is to listen and listen and listen again. And I just can't do it. I just have to okay, I don't want to kill the song. So you're doing really the Lord's work in my point of view.
Well, I am grateful that anybody is on the other side listening and pay attention, because really it's fun. If it reaches one person, 10 people, or 100 people, that makes me feel gratified. Like, I'm not the only crazy person.
No, no, not at all. You should. I hope you continue doing more of them. There's so many more things to talk about.
I want to do the new album. That's what I want to do.
Great. Oh, fantastic. I would love to tie you in on that if I can.
I can't wait. I'm giddy with anticipation.
Scott, you want to tell everyone how to find you and where to find your fantastic videos?
I think if you just search Keith Richards Riff Cousins, they'll come up. You can also search my name. That's the name of the channel. So it's easily found. But yeah, Riff Cousins will bring it all. We'll bring it up. And anybody can contact me through that channel too. I do look. I'm not posted there in a while, but I do look at the comments that get posted there. So
yeah, and I can't recommend it enough for people. Yeah, I can't recommend enough for people. Like I say, there aren't too many people who have dedicated themselves to really getting under the hood for the Stones philosophy, really, for the guitar, like Scott has. And it's just so rewarding as a fan.
Well, like I said, I'm grateful that anybody out there is interested at all, because like I said, the band is somehow underappreciated and understudied. That is possible.
Understudied. Yeah, we'll change all that.
We're trying. We're trying, man.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, to say this was a lot of fun would be an understatement. So I hope we can do this again.
The pleasure was mine. Anytime, look me up.